Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce a 3-time New York bestseller writer, and she will discuss with us about her journey to happiness and to how brought her to be able to write those wonderful and successful books. We have Sophie Burnham today. Hello, Sophie. Thank you so much for being here today with us. Tell us a little bit about your journey to writing all those successful and New York Times seller.
I could collapse at this idea because really I don't have any choice. I started off as a writer. As a child, I was told by everybody, oh, you're going to be a writer. Oh, you're going to be a writer. But I didn't have anything to say. And so I started off as a journalist. I dabbled a little bit in newspapers and then discovered I absolutely hated that. I hate the daily deadline and the short-term view that every crisis of that moment is real. And so I started writing for magazines. Okay. And that was my training ground. Well, actually, I started with film. I wrote and produced and directed 3 films, and one went to the Venice Film Festival, and that was before I discovered that young girls don't write and produce and direct films. So then I decided, okay, I'll teach myself to write. I'm babbling a little bit because you've so thrown me off the mark here. It is true that I have been very successful. I have published 14 books, and that does not count plays and films and radio plays and children's things. But the success is not as important as the writing. It is important. The minute I say that, I think, no, that's not true, because you really want your work published.
Yes.
You want people to read it. There is a 3-part triangular thing of your writing, the paper or computer now, and the reader. And the reader is a part of this. If it's just you and the paper, it's very wonderful. But then you need someone else to be touched by it. It was Tacitus, the Roman historian, who said that his goal was to move the minds and hearts of men and women, of humanity.
Obviously.
And that's been my goal, to move the minds and hearts of people, to touch the minds and hearts of people. So you need a reader. And yet, the success comes always with a certain ashes in your mouth. I will tell you this. The first cover story that I had in New York Magazine, or maybe it was the New York Times Magazine, it was a big deal magazine. And I went away and I looked at the magazine and I thought, good night, I worked 6 weeks on this, and it's just nothing. It's ashes in your mouth. It's not worth anything. I remember I walked out into the park, and I'm looking at this magazine that is now all over the country, and my story is on the front page, front cover, and it's meaningless. What was meaningful was writing it. So while you can say, yes, how wonderful to have 3 books on the New York Times bestseller list. Actually, I'm more proud of the fact that my books are translated into 26 languages.
Wow.
And that my words are known throughout the world, and that someone in China is being touched by my work. That's what you want. I'll never hear from the person. I won't know about it. The other things are our man-made ideas of how you create success. Am I making any sense? I'm not sure I'm making any sense at all.
It makes sense. I mean, everyone has their own definition of what success is, the same as with happiness. Yeah. So obviously, the way that you shared your information and your knowledge to the readers, was your form of success.
That's
now, if
right.
you take, for example, the Book of Angels, you told me, and when we first discussed, you said that it was, you talked about a scandal that happened at the Museum of Arts or something, if I remember correctly, and you mentioned something that they wanted you to write it, you were not sure, you declined, and then you got back
Oh,
to,
we're talking
to
about the
discussing
first book
the
that
first
I wrote.
book, yeah, the first
That's
book.
I'm living in New York, and I'm working successfully as a magazine writer.
Okay.
Which I think is my training, you know, that's where I'm learning the craft. There's a lot of craft you have to learn in order to write well. And my goal is excellence. So,
Perfection.
Perfection. So I have written this 3-part series for New York Magazine, and a publisher comes to me afterward and they said, we want you to write a book about this, about the art world, about the contemporary art market. And I said, no, I have no interest in writing about the art market. I wanted to write from my heart, from an open heart, I didn't want to write journalism. And then I went away and I thought, here I am, I say I want to be a writer. I'm struggling to be a writer. A publisher comes and asks me to write something, and I say no. So I called him back and I said, I've changed my mind, I'll write it. And then it took a long time for the book to come out, and it was a lot of work. And this is the story that I told you, I made a pact with God. Boy, if this book is not a success, I am never writing anything again. This is too much work.
Yes.
And the book didn't come out. It didn't come out. This book was called The Art Crowd, by the way, and is about the contemporary art market. And why is this painting worth $8 million and this painting is not?
$80.
You know, what is art? Anyway, it was a very funny, bitchy look at the art world and the art market, and it didn't come out. And then one day it came out, and the day that it's in the bookstores, that's the day that there's a front page story about a scandal at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And my book, The Art Crowd, is right there for people to see the shenanigans of the art market. So it became a bestseller. And I fled. I was still pretty young, and I knew I was not ready for that kind of celebrity. I don't know how these young kids do it, who are 18 years old and are suddenly celebrities.
Yes.
But I knew that I did not have the inner strength to remain myself in the face of what everybody wanted me to be. So I left New York with my husband and my children. We moved to Washington. And I basically started my career over again, because then you're out of the publishing range and you have to begin again. That was the story that I told you. What I want to say to anyone who is interested in being a writer is that there are long, dark periods where you're not managing to do it well. You can't find the words, and you can't get published. And while I have been very successful, I have also gone through long periods where I've not been able to publish anything. And these are very important, useful periods.
Thank you so much. We will be back shortly after those messages. Message from the universe. When new souls become old souls, you can always tell an old soul by how indifferent they are to setbacks, or at least to what others would call setbacks. Almost like nothing happened. Crazy like an old soul, the universe. My thought would be that old souls have experienced everything in past and present lives. When you're lucky enough to inherit an old soul, you feel and interpret things differently from those who haven't experienced anything, spiritually that is. An old soul will make you feel like no challenges is hard enough for you to not overcome. Anything that comes your way, either it being very difficult in nature, will be just another step closer to where you want to be. Old souls welcome and embrace hurdles in life, accept what comes their way and appreciate everything they already have. They do not complain, point fingers at anyone for their lack of success or failure, talk bad about others behind their back. whined because they had their feeling hurt, or whatever else they may be. Old souls have already experienced all of that, so facing it again in this new life isn't as much as a big deal to them. They know how to work with what they have and learn to not let anything bother them, either it being today or tomorrow or the next life. Learn that when you deal with people that constantly brings in negativity into your own life or even yours, it is not necessarily their fault. They're new souls. They haven't experienced much of anything, and all of this negativity is a way for that new soul to handle a new situation that has never yet crossed their path. Eventually, after amassing lots of experience in this present life, that new soul will eventually become an old one when it reincarnates into a new physical body in the next life. Even though consciousness remains despite of the death of the physical body, the existing soul navigates throughout the universe until it finds its new resting place. Some souls never experience that privilege of having another chance in life or another opportunity to complete their mission. The power from above has the last word on what mission is meant to be completed and which one isn't. Can you imagine the amount of work is needed to sort out that what mission has meaning and which doesn't? Talk about massive amount of responsibilities. I can just imagine the souls going to God and asking, "Yo, God, I've been here for 2,200 years, and you asked me to be patient. But come on, my patience has limits. When will you allow me to visit another physical body on earth so I can finish my previous mission?" Just imagine 7 billion souls asking the same question, what God can do. I guess it all comes down to priorities. We're all meant to complete whatever mission we were meant to finish, and depending on how our mission can change the world for the better, God will decide and will prioritize among the billions of requests from souls navigating through our vast universe. So if you think you have a lot of tasks to complete, just imagine what God is going through. Welcome back to the Happiness Journey. Again, Sophie, thank you so much for being here. So you were talking about the dark moments or the difficult times that you have when it comes to writing, the writer's block. If you could just elaborate a little bit more about it.
There was a period when my marriage split up and I was very unhappy. And there was an 8-year period where I wrote like crazy and I could not get anything published. And one of the books that I wrote in that time is this book, For Writers Only.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about the purpose
and
of
this book I wrote for myself in this dark period where I couldn't get anything published, to remind myself of what writing is about. And you're supposed to open it at any page and read it, read a few lines in it. It just has little paragraphs,
Okay.
and then close it and go back to work. That the business of the writer is to write. And in this period of 8 years, I wrote 6 books, but then I couldn't get them published. Nobody wanted them, and I woke up after that 8 years thinking, oh, what a failure I am. I've written 6 books. It's been 10 years since I published anything. I'm a complete failure. And then, by a confluence of circumstances, one of them was published. It became a book of angels. It took off. It was a phenomenon. They could not keep the book in print. It was selling so fast. People would buy 10 and 12 copies and give to their friends, who would buy 10 and 12 copies and give to their friends. They had not expected this. The publisher had expected that they would sell 5,000 copies perhaps to libraries and recover their cost and make a small profit, and that would be it. But it was just the right timing. And then all of the other books that I had written in that period came out, one after another. And they were successful. But remember my saying about looking at the article, the magazine article, a cover story, and feeling, what a waste, nothing, it was not enough. You're very happy to have a book published.
Yes.
I am very happy whenever I get a letter from someone saying, and I get them still every week, saying, I read such and such a book and I just want to tell you. Yeah. And they send me emails or they send me letters that they have written by hand. And this means everything to the writer because you're alone. There you are, isolated like a little mole in your closet, writing.
Do you feel like being an author is a very lonely job?
Oh,
I mean,
it's
it's
stiflingly lonely. There are moments when you just ache with loneliness, yes.
even if you have a family, even if you have people around you, mentally, it drains you in a way that no other job can actually do unless, because
Well-
you're just it's you and your computer screen, and that's about it. So how do you discipline yourself? I mean, especially if we have a lot of authors or potential authors out there that are watching this program, they want to know what really entices you to wake up in the morning, sit down in your chair, and pull out 10,000 words.
Now we're back to For Writers Only. I'll plug this book.
Yes.
But loneliness is the thing because you can't do this work except in solitude.
Okay.
Now, it's true, Bertolt Brecht would write in a cafe.
Okay.
And you see people today go to Starbucks and they've got their computers and they're
write,
writing.
yes.
And there's an illusion of camaraderie.
I see.
But the work is done alone. And it's not like plays. Now, plays, for example, are completely collaborative, television, film. But you don't do the whole work. You don't do it from the beginning
That's
to
true.
the end.
Okay.
And it's only a very few people who have the total vision. When you write a book, it's your vision all the way through.
From beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Did you decide to write yourself
And
an
it
outline?
takes discipline. You're
does,
right.
okay.
That is a very good word. It takes discipline. It takes drive, character, longing. But every great writer, when I was writing for Writers Only, I wanted to know, how did the great writers do it? How did the immortals do it? Was Tolstoy lonely? What did he do? And that's important. You know, I wanted to know. Yes, they were lonely and they did it anyway.
And did you feel that after a while, when it came to writing the New York Times bestseller, did you give yourself a deadline? Did you say, okay, by this date, it has to be done no matter what?
No.
Or was there like
No,
a
absolutely
delay?
not,
Or was,
no.
Okay.
But you don't know it's going to be a New York Times bestseller. You think,
Well,
I mean,
yes.
you know, of course you sit down to write and you think this is Nobel Prize.
Yes.
But that's not why you're writing it. You're writing, all right, you want to know what I think is the most important thing for a writer to have? An open heart.
Okay.
An open heart to take the dare and go where no one has ever gone before, and they say in Star Trek, and do your vision and put it out there and be ready to take the failure if it doesn't work.
That's an interesting
That's
point.
it.
Now, do you feel like when you wrote those books, did you write yourself an outline or you just went with the flow? How did you, because a lot of authors, what they're concerned about, said, well, I need to think about the table of contents before I can think about writing the book. Do you feel that
You
it's
know what?
preferable to write it and then figure out the table of content?
I never work with outline, and I urge people never work by outline.
Okay.
If you have an outline and you're writing to the outline, why would you write the book? You already know it.
Good point.
There's going to be no surprise. It's not going to be interesting. It's just going to be a labor of filling in, you know, paint by numbers
Okay.
and fill it in. What you want to do when you're writing is to go into that space where suddenly you are being written through. You don't know how you know these things, and you come out of this trance 20 minutes later or an hour later, and you look at it and you think, I don't even know these things. It is so beautifully expressed. How did that happen? That's what you're looking for. You're looking for the muse. Never write by outline.
Excellent.
If you're trying to write something important,
Do you surprise yourself? when
something
you write?
original, something
Yes.
new, something that you don't know about.
But do you surprise yourself after like reading your book once it's done to say, how did I write that?
Oh, always. Absolutely. Absolutely always. And those things are always the best. It's when I am writing from my mind, or by outline, as you say, that it's poor. That it's just draftsmanship. but it doesn't become literature. It doesn't become immortal. It doesn't touch the minds and hearts of people.
Excellent. You did have an agent for your books, is that correct?
I did have an agent.
Okay, did your agent direct you in any way to say, well, this is what we want to hear about this book and this is what we do not want to hear?
Well, yes and no. I have never had the privilege that I've always wanted of having an editor who was a friend and who would guide me in my writing. I've never been given that joy, and I know writers who have, and it's a big help. We were talking earlier about the solitude, but if you have an editor, then she can do what you're talking about. My agent did not, although many agents do this initial thing. Today, the agents are much closer to being editors than they used to be.
Okay.
But
okay. Do you feel that when it comes to looking for a traditional publisher versus self-publishing, what would you recommend to new authors? Those who are like aspiring, they want to be able to start somewhere. Do they need to waste more of their time to be able to look for like Penguin Publishing or HarperCollins, or they should just write their first book and then present it to them and not expect royalty payment from the beginning like they usually do with all the major authors? What would be your recommendation for that, Sophie?
That's an entire program in itself,
yes.
isn't it? The whole publishing business. The publishing business has changed a lot since I got into it. And it is much harder for writers today, I'm told. First, it seems to be more and more important to have a degree in creative writing.
Okay.
And this was not important when I was beginning. There, you taught yourself.
You taught yourself how to write.
And you taught yourself by doing it. But now you go and you pay someone to give you an MFA. The other thing is you have to write in order to have something to submit to the publishers. So of course you have to finish the book. You probably have to finish 1 or 2 books before your 3rd book. Now I know how to write a book, and that one will get published. The publishing business is in such chaos at the moment because they're all owned by other companies. So they're big conglomerates that own the publishing business, and they are always looking now for the profitable book, and they're not as willing as they used to be to invest in the new writers in hopes, knowing that their books are not going to make any money, but in hopes that as they develop, they will make money. Scott Fitzgerald did not make any money on his first books. He did it later under the attention of the publishing business. So that brings you to the self-publishing, and the self-publishing is really easy, and it's not all that expensive. The problem is, how do you get the word out?
Yes.
How do you promote it? And I think to any young writer or mature writer who wants to publish a book and wants to just get the book out there and not worry about the media and the mainstream publishing, give yourself a very tight promotion budget, because you can go over.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. And you can spend an enormous amount of money promoting your book to no avail at all. You pay for the reviews. I didn't know this. I didn't know you paid for reviews
Yes,
now.
it seems like it all changed a lot.
If you're doing it they'll say, oh yes, but you'll get 80% of the royalties. This is true, but you're doing 80% of the work that the publisher did too. You're earning every penny of that, and you're not writing. So it's a toss-up.
It's a challenging industry.
It's a challenge. And we're back to this idea of saying, and I tell this to my students, the very first thing when they come, sit down, I want you to give me your name, and you're to say, I am a writer. You have to say, I am Sophie, I am a writer. I am Amy, I am a writer. I am John, I am a writer. You would be amazed how few people can say, I am a writer, I am an artist. And they have to say it to themselves over and over again to
believe it.
To believe it. And once you believe it, someone else will believe it.
So-
You're back to the open heart
Yes.
and this is what I want, and the universe, I want you to give it to me. And I'm willing to do the work.
As a successful author and writer, what would be your best recommendation to all those aspiring authors out there? What would you tell them if you would have to sit down with them and they tell you, yes, Sophie, I am a writer? What would be your next step, or what would you tell from this point forward?
Then I say, then go and write. And don't stand up. You take 2 hours every day that you're writing, and you sit at your desk and you write for 2 hours. If you have nothing to say and you can't even pick up your pen, then write how bad it is and you can't have anything to say. But sit there for 2 hours.
Thank you so much for coming over today. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending the show, and we will see you very soon. Again, this is the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan.